Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So since Gorr has come out in the featured 6-star hero crystal, now a lot more people do have him, and I have received pretty much endless requests of kind of a Gorr guide video, because I do happen to have a rank 4 that I, full disclosure, ranked up primarily for Alliance 4 defense, but ever since then I actually started to appreciate the character quite a bit more, and therefore I was extremely pumped to hear he is going to get a tune-up, I believe in January or February, and that will inevitably change the character, because at the moment character does have a couple of very glaring and obvious weaknesses, namely the two that Kabam said they are addressing in his tune-up. Number one, that is his shadow magic buffs kind of fall off too quickly, and you do really need to juggle them in order to be able to maintain your damage output, because in any kind of more complex fight the damage can fall off, but that also is kind of conditional. The damage also really just falls off if you go for your level 2s and level 1s. If you stick to level 3s, then you can maintain a very high damage output. Just FYI at the moment. Hopefully that is going to change in the future. And number 2 is his undermine buff. Also in the video you can see me periodically use a 4-star, and 4-star max sig undermine buff lasts only 7 seconds, and those 2 extra seconds, that is the difference in between 6-star max sig and a 4-star max sig, do feel quite significantly. So the first kind of question to answer is, defensively Gorr does not have to be awakened. Offensively you do want to have him awakened, and very high sig if you want to benefit from his undermine and ability to fight against the auto block. So first let's go and take a look at a couple of rotations and what you can do with Gorr. So how he works is, basically he wants to get up as many shadow magic buffs as possible. In order for you to do that, you want to finish combos with your light attacks. Every time you do, you're gonna get one of the 3 shadow magic buffs in kind of like a circling order. One of them is bleed, one of them is poison, one of them is shock. Then every so often you want to win a medium combo in order to place corresponding debuff for each of your shadow magic buffs. It can also trigger through block, as we can see here, and with this you can see that I'm kind of building up to my level 3 whilst trying to get some debuffs on the opponent and building up my shadow magic buffs as well. Here I'm gonna go for another one of them, so I had like 5 of them active at this point. Level 3 activates 1 of each, and most importantly also pauses them for about 6 seconds. So with that I am able to get many more buffs. Then I drop my heavy attack. As long as I have more than 20 debuffs on the opponent, it gives me massive power gain that lets me push to level 3, and that level 3 does a ton of damage. And at this point it's kind of a debuff fiesta. We can see that every time I do a medium combo, I'm going to be able to place 11 or 10 or whatever debuffs on the opponent, and even though they are not the strongest damage over time effects individually, as we can see at this point I have well over 45 I think debuffs on the Winter Soldier, and he's just ticking out, he's leaking health, and that is how I'm going to finish health. However, that is not necessarily the best or fastest rotation in all the circumstances. The double level 3 rotation immediately is kind of what you were showed to do in the deep dive, and here we can see that the biggest hit was 135 hits. And the fight duration, let's take a look at that, was here 1 minute and 35. But let's move on to a bit different strategy. So we're kind of starting pretty much exactly the same. We're just racing to a level 3 and building up a few debuffs. Now, as we get to level 3, just before that, obviously, I do want to get an additional shadow magic buff active. In reality, I probably just should have went for another set of debuffs. But now, instead of immediately going for my level 3, I am going to try and put up as many debuffs on Winter Soldier as possible before I drop my heavy attack and before I drop my next level 3. And as a result of that, we are gonna see something completely different. At this point I should have dropped my level 3 already, to be honest, because that would have been more than enough to finish off the fight. But we're going to see the damage on that level 3. Also, what is to know, the more shadow magic buffs you have and the more debuffs the opponent has, the more damage they take. And this level 3 hit for 200 and... where is the screen? That final level 3 hit for like 300,000 damage. So I could have easily dropped it when Winter Soldier was at 50% health, and I would have been quicker. I was still quicker than the first time around, but I was even quicker. I could have been even faster. I would have finished it like around 10-15 seconds quicker, which basically means that in kind of medium to long level fights, your best bet is to build up to level 3 with some debuffs active, then get a bunch of debuffs on Winter Soldier, and then drop a level 3 for a massive finish. Now, this rotation is also viable, but I'm going to show, especially without synergies, this video clip in itself is going to showcase exactly the current problem with Gorr. You see, ideally, if you're going for shorter fights, the way you would want to play Gorr is basically keep building up your shadow magic buffs until you're at about 2.5, 2.9 bars of power. So basically, past 2 bars of power, with as many shadow magic buffs as active. Make sure you have at least one of each debuff on the opponent, because that is going to determine how many Furies you get. And as I do now, and you get 4 Furies that do improve your damage output quite significantly. And then you would want to basically just spam as many debuffs as you can, and refresh your Furies with your level 1 if you want, or quickly rush to another level 2 in order to get 8 Furies. So this is in theory how you would want to play Gorr in shorter fights. And if we take a look at it to this point, this is 1 minute in. So 1 minute in the fight, we have dealt about 240,000 damage to Winter Soldier. This is competitive pace with, you know, solid usable. This is more health pool than the vast majority of the champions in Battlegrounds have. With rotations such as this, you can also be quite fast for stuff like Battlegrounds content. But the problem is, if anything slows down, if anything goes awry, as you're going to see here, past this point, if you do not do your level 3 rotation, your damage output just falls off, because your shadow magic buffs start expiring, and you are basically being forced to decide how you're going to continue. But it's a lose-lose situation. If you try to stick up more debuffs, well, you're going to fail, because you don't have as many shadow magic buffs. So instead of sticking up 8, 9, 10 debuffs with your medium, you're sticking up 2 or 3 debuffs only at a time. Also, if you want to maintain your Furies, you kind of have to throw those level 1s, which, fair enough, pause your shadow magic buffs for about 6 seconds, but it's just not quite long enough of a pause. And then in between all of it, you do have to keep dropping combos with the light finisher in order to regain some of your shadow magic buffs. Yes, you hit harder, but all the debuff damage, as you can see here, doesn't really do all that much. So that second half of this fight effectively showed the current problem with Gorr, something that hopefully gets addressed in the future. However, that does not mean that Gorr is currently unusable in Battlegrounds. So here we're going to take a look at the 4-star Gorr against Penny Parker. And Gorr is a great Penny Parker counter because of his Undermine buff, which basically means that you can completely ignore her charges as long as you are able to remain aggressive. And with that, we can see that she's trying to trigger her auto block. Nothing's happening. She has that bleed active. Also, do not mind the excessive block damage in these 4-star fights, because in Battlegrounds and pretty much all the content, opponents get more of an health increase than their attack increase. And here the attack values are just disproportional. So the block damage is out of this world. So here we can see that Gorr is going up against Penny. Everything's pretty fine. I'm putting on some debuffs. So this is a 4-star Gorr against the 6-star rank 3 Penny. I have dropped my level 3. And again, here's the problem, because my Undermine buff only lasts 7 seconds. And that is noticeable. Otherwise, I would have had time to be even more aggressive with stacking my debuffs. However, after that initial level 3 and a little bit of time, you can see that 1 minute 8 seconds, and that is a 4-star rank 4 or rank 3 Gorr against the 6-star rank 3 Penny Parker. So that is a very solid time to kill very big Penny Parker, and you can do that in Battlegrounds. So he is a very good Battlegrounds counter to Penny Parker. Obviously, he can do the same and pretty much worse against MCOC, because unlike Penny Parker, you don't have to have your Undermine active all the time to be very good against MCOC, because once you have gotten rid of his auto block or flux shield charge or whatever it is called, you can also let your undermine expire, and then the worst thing that happens is he will auto block you, but you're gonna have no real big consequences for it, and then you can just retrigger your undermine later. So MCOC fight is easier in the sense that you do not need to worry about upkeep as much as you would in a regular fight. And here we can see that I'm using the level 2 rotation, which again perhaps was not the best call, because that level 2 rotation, you really need to be kind of like on point and very cooperative AI if you want to pull it off in kind of like shorter fights. Typically it's always safer to go for level 3, because it does give you much more time, much more leeway to kind of fight. And yes, it is longer in many cases. Well, in some cases it is longer, but it's definitely much safer. So I do hope, again, that is something that tune-up for Gorr addresses. However, Gorr is also capable of doing a ton of fights that people don't necessarily think he's particularly good for, and that is to do with his massive level 3s. Well, first things here, Gorr is actually one of my kind of favorite Guardian counters that a lot of people do not always necessarily immediately think of, because obviously one of the kind of like luring sides of Gorr is that he is a big problem on defense if opponents do not have mystics or like a ghost or a kingpin. But even with ghost and kingpin, there can be trouble. But yes, of course, against mystic characters, Gorr can be nuked down, like most cosmic champions, to be honest. So that is Gorr's kind of problem. Gorr can be an absolutely savage defender. He has won me quite a few Battlegrounds matches, I'll be 100% honest. But it is always nice to draft in Gorr when opponent is forced to bring in a counter for Gorr, and then you just turn around and use Gorr in offense. It's like one of my favorite things. And here we can see again that was a 5-star rank 3 Gorr against 6-star rank 4 Guardian in under a minute, so that's not too bad. But yeah, of course, Iron Man Infinity War again. Gorr is very good because of a couple of reasons. Number one, you do not need to worry about Iron Man Infinity War's auto block at all. That's just not a thing. As long as you can maintain to be aggressive enough, you just can be aggressive enough. You do not need to watch how many armor ups he has, because as we're going to see, I think in this moment here, he does have his 4 armor ups. He tries to auto block, but you're unblockable thanks to your undermine, and everything's fine. It's quite easy. So at this point, I'm nearly at 3 bars of power. You can see that I am going to drop a couple more combo enders. I do want him to use his level 2 here. Finally, he does. And we can see that he's ticking away quite drastically. And what I am going to do is I'm going to get in a couple of last debuffs. I probably could have dropped my level 3 straight after his level 2. But we're going to completely bypass the finish of it, because we just nuked down his last bit of health with that 32k special there, even with that. And that level 3 can hit very hard even on the first build-up as well. Gorr is also surprisingly very good thing counter, which is again another thing that people never think about. Because number one, Gorr inflicts bleeds, as we see here. I think I had one failed fight here against Thing where I kind of hadn't just gotten in rotation, and one nice fight, but I hope that this is the nice one that I'm showing you. Either way, so first of all, you can manage Thing's rock stacks if you want quite effectively, and also you basically bypass Thing's protection mechanics by, well, one, not hitting that hard on your base, and number two, when you do hit hard, it is a single hit level 3, which protection is kind of meaningless. So what am I doing here is obviously I'm just kind of building up to my level 3, dropping in a few debuffs, which is nice. I have what, 16 now at this point. I have 19 debuffs, so Thing is ticking away, 22 debuffs, and here Thing is at 47%. And I'm going to be dropping my level 3. And again, this is a 5-star against 6-star rank 3 SIG 200 Thing. And that level 3 here, I'm not even skipping the level 3 animation as well, because that is finish. And realistically, that is how a Battlegrounds Thing fight can go when you use Gorr. And we're going to see the time. It is going to be something around a minute. So he is, again, I'm sure they are faster, and that's one of the things with Gorr. Gorr is not going to necessarily always be the fastest, but he can take quite a lot of tricky opponents. And if you do not have a perfect counter, he can be a good kind of like a secondary counter. That is a big thing taken down with Gorr pretty much effortlessly. Next, we're going to be going up against Warlock. Warlock is kind of like a candy matchup for Gorr, if we're being honest, because everything that Gorr does kind of culminates in being able to absolutely disseminate Warlock, because you do not care if you don't crit on your specials with Gorr too much. Additionally, you do have at least 4 buffs active pretty much at all times, unless the fight has gone horribly wrong, which means that infection is non-existent. You just get to 20 charges and it immediately drops off. And that's pretty much all she wrote. What you do is you get to your level 3 with plenty of debuffs active, you drop your level 3, and here we can see that Warlock is ticking away. Also against tech champions, his degens do get extra potency, and we can see that as he's throwing that, you know, he's just dead. So Warlock is obviously an excellent matchup, and that is quite important in Battlegrounds, because Warlock is also a champion that can be a problem. Additionally, for instance, big tanky champions that aren't mystics, because against mystics Gorr does not necessarily have the best time, is also something that Gorr can kind of specialize, because often in Gorr fights, when you go for your level 3s, it is an overkill. But another good thing about Gorr when you go up against King Groot is that number one, you render their regeneration basically useless, because of all the debuffs, all the degens, all the poisons, everything that you place on the opponents basically completely shuts down their regeneration abilities. And again, specifically against King Groot, you can immediately get rid of his Fury phase, so you do not really have to worry about King Groot shrugging off many things, as we saw there. And then once you go for your level 3, we can see you do massive amounts of damage, and there, ideally, I would have managed to squeeze in a level 3, heavy attack in order to build myself up to level 3 already, but this is going to be kind of like an overkill finish, I suppose. I probably should have went here for another level 3 and the fight would have been over, but here another cool trick to finish off fights is drop that heavy attack, and as we can see, King Groot is at 3 bars of power, but we're continuously hitting him. So this is like another kind of like a finishing trick for Gorr, where as we can see that he's at like 20% and he's ticking down reliably, but I want to kind of like rush my finish. So what you do is you drop your heavy attack and push opponent basically in 3 bars of power with this, and you immediately drop your level 2. Whether it connects or it doesn't matter, because you're going to give time for your damage over time effects to do their work. And additionally, as we saw here, I had another level 1 in the pocket, which I immediately threw before he could use his level 3, and finish the fight relatively quickly that way. And again, that was a fairly solid kill there. Gorr is also an option against Hulkling, again, something that not many people could realize or think about. And again, do not look at the excessive block damage here, because this is a rank 3 Hulkling and this is a 4-star rank 3 Gorr. Normally the attack value difference is not as big as it is shown here. But how do you do Hulkling with Gorr? Well, it's because of your massive level 3s, and also because your damage over time effects can completely shut down Hulkling's healing, obviously. So what you do is basically just rush to your level 3, trying to get as many shadow magic buffs as possible. Don't care about anything else really, which special attacks Hulkling is throwing, whether he goes indestructible, when he goes indestructible. Only thing that you do kind of care is get on some debuffs on Hulkling before you throw your level 3, because you will want to rely on some damage there. So you can see that he still is indestructible, but at the same time he has like, what, 20-30 debuffs active. So we drop a massive level 3, that Hulkling is, you know, already being significantly damaged, and you just drop your heavy attack. Again, we still have 30 some debuffs active. You drop your second level 3, and that is how you do Hulkling with Gorr. Again, it will not necessarily be the fastest kill always, but it can be fast enough, again, if you are in a pinch, considering that you can easily draft Gorr as a defender and force opponents, you know, to look for counters. He's one of those champions where opponents have to look for counters. And again, even fights like Nick Fury can be done with Gorr. Now, you do need to be a bit careful, obviously, with the idea that you do want to often finish combos with light attack or full combos, so you do need to be aware when and how many charges Nick Fury has, and when to do full combos and not. But the finishing sequence here of Nick Fury is also going to be fairly straightforward. So I have about, 15 debuffs on Nick? Maybe a bit more now. So we're going to go in for another one, and I'm going to go with level 3 to basically wipe out the remainder of his health bar. This is rank 4 Nick against a 5-star rank 3 Gorr, by the way. So I'm going to drop my level 3, and here we can see that Nick is at 1%, so that's first life over. And at the same time, I'm perfectly kind of positioned to attack his second LMD, because I still have all my shadow magic buffs, which means I will be able to very quickly place quite a few of my debuffs back on Nick that are going to do, decent damage. Now here Nick isn't necessarily the most cooperative. I can place few of my debuffs on him through block as well, and then he just ticks down. Again, not the fastest, obviously this is 1 minute and 30 clip, but definitely doable. And then there are fights that I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable doing in Battlegrounds scenarios, but where better players than me possibly would. So, for instance, you can do Korg with Gorr. Again, not the fastest, but you can. So as we can see here, we are avoiding that rockfield damage. Again, keep in mind that the power difference here is quite significant, and normally if I do make a mistake and land my medium into his rock stacks, then I normally would not take as much damage because I do have a relatively high sig Korg and it is a rank 3. And here we saw that I did make a mistake and immediately took 14% of my health as damage. So that did hurt a bit. So here I'm again gonna try and get that light thingy in. Perfect, we got rid of his remaining charges. Now I'm gonna get in some debuffs on Korg, and then I'm gonna drop my level 3. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to drop it in time, but this can also work out, because with this level 3, I will be able to get rid of all the Korg's charges, and well, we're going to see what happens shortly thereafter, basically. So I want to get in as many debuffs as I can on this Korg, drop my heavy attack as soon as I reach past 20, drop my level 3 before he regains his rock stacks, and let's see how the fight is going to go down. So that's a fairly sizable level 3 here, and that's one dead Gorg. Again, not a great counter by any means, not your ideal choice, but he can get the job done. And again, where I have personally found value into having Gorr in many metas in my Battlegrounds deck is quite often on him serving as a very good bait, where you draft him in the middle and then opponents, think of countering Gorr without thinking of the fights that Gorr can do offensively and can do them well enough. And again, he's not Ghost, he's not going to be Hitmonkey that finishes fights in like 45 seconds, something like that. Even though I have had some very, very quick fights with him against like Warlocks and stuff like that as a rank 4. And again, most importantly, defensively, he does not need to be awakened to be a very dangerous defender. But offensively, you do want to have him awakened in order to extend the duration of your debuffs and in order to be able to combat auto block. So I hope this video kind of helped you get your wits about Gorr and his abilities and what he can and cannot do in kind of like more practical situations. And yeah, if you enjoyed it, hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the good buttons. I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about